I'm Sheila Rondeau, and I'm the CEO of MOGXP. MOGXP is an experiential marketing company that specializes in creating branded experiences that allows consumers and brands to come together in memorable moments. My show is Legends in Leadership, and I have a fabulous guest today. And somehow I have managed to get this guest who has been on Oprah and has been on Steve Harvey and all these other amazing shows. So I would like to welcome Amilya Antonetti.
Pleasure to be here.
So happy to have you. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here.
So I understand your specialty is really about people. And when I say people in the broadest sense of people, their personal lives, their work lives, how they show up, and the conversations we have to have better lives, better performance, and succeed in the things we want to. Help me reframe that, because I know that that's really what you're doing.
So I'm a behaviorist. I mean, although I've been a CEO, this will be my 10th company, and I've had 56,000 employees around the globe. My passion is for people, really to understand what makes people tick, but more importantly, how to get them from where they are to where they want to be. And inside of our organizations, there's so many misconceptions. We hear everything about engagement, right? We talk about performance, we talk about progress. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not solving the actual problem. And so by decoding, right, the behavior of what's causing the resistance between where you are and the outcome, and then giving people the actual tools to do that. So my big quip-it, that I live by is to heal the unintended pain. Right? Not the pain that somebody does deliberately, right? For most of us, when we create pain, we didn't mean to, but it doesn't mean that we energetically don't have the responsibility of that pain. And we get mushed up in it we have a lot of passion. There's a lot of things that people want to do, but they're like, I don't know how to start, or I don't know how to get there, or I start getting there and they get resistance and then they quit. And I'm like, if I could just make those little nuggets easier, then people are empowered to design whatever life that they want. Right? Not beholden to somebody else. It's not contingent on another person or a company or an opportunity. I always say the journey's within. The more you can go within, the more you can bring whatever you want into your life.
Okay. So leaders of organizations, how do they fit this role? Where do they play in all of this? And what is their responsibility?
So, as a CEO, most importantly, my main responsibility is to serve my team. It is 100% about my service to them, and then to empower them with the systems and the tools for them to then serve their direct reports all the way down to the front line, all the way to the customer. But if I think too far out, then I'm not actually serving my circle. And there's gaps within the organization where some are served and some are not served. And so until we build those relationships that are more consistent, right? Consistency is what brings us to trust. And when we don't have the consistency within what we intended and the actual experience, that's where we have all of this disengagement within the company. And so the misconception is that leadership has something to do with personal development. Leadership has nothing to do with personal development. Leadership training is to drive action, right? That's what it does. It's tactical. But humans don't grow and develop based on tactics. If they did, they would just YouTube something and they'd be like, okay, look at, I just changed. That's not what happens. What you have to understand is there is leadership, which is the tactical side of business, but then there is the behavior side of it, meaning that what is in the way of me getting the result? That's what we don't understand within organizations. We don't understand human beings. So I keep watching people solve the wrong problem. And I'm like, that's not the problem. The problem's way over here. And so that's what I try to help people understand. Where are you in the way of, right? We just got off of, everybody was talking about love. I was talking to all these matchmakers and they were like, I'm trying to find love, right match. And I was like, you're asking the wrong question. And they were like, well, what are you talking about? I'm like, it's not about finding something. You have to ask yourself, how am I in the way of love? What am I doing that I'm in the way of love? And that's what we have to do within organizations to help individuals understand where they are in the way of their desired outcome. It has nothing to do with me. And the more I can serve, the more I can bring the systems and tools so that they design their life, what they care about, how they want to see, hear, and experience. That's how you build the community within the organization.
Can you give me more of a detail of what does that look like for, say, one little group at an office? How does that come to fruition?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. So I'll just give you a simple example. when we have people inside of our platform, we're a technology company, a software company. Our software helps people understand from their perspective what has meaning, what has value. So a company has the value drivers, but most of the people don't understand what drives value for them. So here's a typical scenario. Most people would like to get their number one priority done before lunch. Very common, right? I'd like to get this done and out of the way when I start my day. However, most companies have their meetings in the morning. And so already subconsciously, I have resistance against you because I'm like, you are having this nonsense. You're in the way of what I want to do. And so that resentment is built within the person and the manager, the person, the manager, and the company. And it just festers on top of the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And then you wonder why people are not committed to their job, because the way they see their job, the way they see the performance, it's not the way you're delivering it. Now, a manager doesn't have a way to see all of those individual behaviors right now, currently. That's part of the reason why I designed the software, to say if a manager understood, let's just say 80% of their team wanted to work on their first priority prior to lunch, and all they did was simply move the meeting to right after lunch. Now you're creating flow, right? Another typical thing that happens is when we try to do development within a company, we do something called lunch and learns. When you poll your people, you'll find that the most majority of people use their lunchtime for family, for connection, for walking, for resetting. It's time for them to refill their bucket. And then you offer a lunch and learn. So now what you create is called conflict, meaning that I want to go to the lunch and learn because I want to learn about whatever that topic is. But at the same time, I also have to be able to replenish myself. So what do people do? They do this at their own suffering. And when we have little tiny moments of suffering throughout the day, I don't trust you anymore because I have to sacrifice me to do what you're offering, the opportunity. And that resentment is, I never get access to the opportunities. Well, that's not a real thing, but that's how people start to feel. Okay. And these little tiny misalignments that go unseen, unspoken about, causes people to not engage. And so when we talk about employees, they're like, I don't see my future here. Well, why don't they see their future here? Because you're causing all these moments of suffering. I don't want to work for you. And we have to be able to reveal that and then bring in that alignment by tweaking things around. Or if something is on my side, we get, when we talk with management companies, right, somebody who's got a different relationship with time, right? So especially what generation you're at, I may come to a meeting 8:05. Well, in my world, I'm on time. In your world, I'm late. Right?
Yeah. And you were here 15, you were supposed to be here 15 minutes early.
And so what happens is I don't think I did anything wrong.
Yeah. Not
because I don't understand. It's because my relationship with time is different than yours. But what happens is I'm upset because I can't figure out why you're in a bad mood, and you're upset because why wasn't I here? And so bridging those little tiny details is what causes people to come together in a community. And it's the little thing. It cracks me up when I go into businesses because they're looking at these big things. I'm like, you realize life is not defined by those big grand gestures, right? The end of the year, whatever. It's the small moments, right? Small moments, small consistencies is what build a relationship, not grand gestures. And so people are like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, you're still focused on the end of the year bonus or the big waha, but every day for me feels horrible. Focus on the everyday, focus on the experience. Like you talked about, focus on the experience. I'll follow you forever. And that's what's misjointed in businesses.
So I guess it wouldn't only be in those things that are frustrating in getting work done, but it has to also really become more frustrating even if it has to do with your compensation. For a salesperson to have meetings in the middle of the day during those golden hours when they should be seeing clients and making phone calls and having paperwork that has to be done within a certain number of hours instead of something that I can do later on after I've fulfilled the obligations I need to in order to meet my quota to get my commissions.
Oh, it's all over companies. I mean, I literally walk through a company in 10 minutes and I can tell them exactly what's happening on the bottom line. And they're like, oh my gosh, are you psychic? I'll go, no, your relationship with people are broken. I went through one of our clients, right? They have big warehouses, right? So they've got people working on the floor for an end result. And there's these big monitors all over the warehouses telling them how many pieces are done, right? So 10 pieces, 20 pieces, thousands of pieces. And I looked around and I was laughing. I was like, what are those things for? And they're like, so they know how many they have executed in this hour per day. And I was like, that's a waste of money. And I was like, so I went in the back, and what I changed up there was I changed the monitors to say lives saved. How many lives saved? That's what they care about. And so now you've got people who will stay to the end of, like, say, the run because they know that they're going to save 8 more lives. That's what cared people about, what has meaning, right? And so if you can't have somebody and attach what they're doing to what it actually means, people will not engage. And we don't have those conversations, right? I can just walk around any company and walk with anybody in the hallway and stop and say, what is it that you do that creates meaning for your teammates, for your management, for the company, for the customer? And they go, what? I'm like, when you're contributing? And they'll go, well, this is what I do. I'm like, I didn't ask you what you did. I asked you what it means. And they don't know what it means, which means they're underneath a leadership that doesn't know from the top down. Now, if I talk to CEOs, especially CEOs who've been in the game for a while, what they're concerned about is their legacy. The whole reason why we start companies, that isn't to make money, right? That's not why we do what we do. And what they get concerned about is their legacy isn't being transferred. What they do and why they've been doing it isn't all the way through the company. If it's not all the way through the company, if you can't make it mean something here, do you think it means anything down here? And those are the things where we're broken within organizations. And we have people starving, literally starving to be seen, to be heard, to be valued, to be recognized. Matter of fact, one of the events I was, just when I was here, one of the guys pulled me aside. He said, I don't think I'm coming to this event again. And I said, tell me more. He said, I just feel like I just don't belong here. I go, what about the messaging is saying to you that you don't belong? He was like, this thing. And I was like, okay, how do you see that event? And he was like, this is how I see it. I was like, but what if it meant something different? He was like, well, how can that be? I said, what you're witnessing, right, is a holding on back to where we at once place felt safe, right? So what he was experiencing was my generation where we felt safe when these things were in place. Well, he's 25 years younger than me. That doesn't create safety for him. It actually triggers for him to run. And I was like, that's what I'm holding on to. And he's like, well, God, if somebody would have bridged this conversation, I would have felt more like I belonged here, but I feel excluded. Here, one experience, right? Losing somebody who's an amazing, incredible human, but we lost him because we didn't start the conversation with, this is what it means to me. But it doesn't have to mean that to you. But if you understand how I'm relating to the experience, that I'm saying it's part of my safety for me feeling secure. I have a thing about consistency. If I explain that to you, you can at least jump onto the experience. But if I leave you to figure it out on your own, you're like, wow, they seem really guarded. It doesn't sound like I belong here. It doesn't sound very welcoming. And this is what happens. These little experiences is what's causing people to opt out. And the younger they are, the more confusing it is.
So this would directly relate and how companies handle this relates to culture. So when you start looking at culture and determining if you're a fit at a company, you probably have these same filters in place. And
you don't even know what they are, right? It's the inner compass, right? You get in a situation and you're like, wow, it looks so good on paper. And now that I'm here, I'm not really sure. Because what you wrote on the paper wasn't attached to the actual experience for me. You wrote it for you. Every job description that I look at, I crack up, right? Because I was like, that was a job description that was written for 1940s, right? Because you're not talking to me. The audience has changed. And we're using the same templates. We're having the same meetings. And I was like, really? The same wasted meetings we thought we had 10 years ago? We're still using the meetings. And now we're having resistance from our younger employees who don't do that, right? I'm like, have a stand-up huddle, right? Like, get with the program on where we are and how we serve. Learn how to be able to create the engagement and the meaning and the development through Zoom. Stop being mad that it's Zoom. It is Zoom. Or whatever you're using, but get to the fact that you're going to have to learn, how do I lead a workforce when not all of them are right here? Which means leading from the front is obsolete. You're still leading from the front. I'm telling you, we're losing, just nobody told you. You have to learn how to lead from the back. And that's hard. And I tell people, get in a conga line, stand in the front, and look how easy it is to lead people around the room. Now do it from the back. Now it's like herding cats. And I'm like, yeah, totally different skill set. So you may have had great skills 10 years ago. They're not relevant right now. So either be pissed off about it or do something differently. And if you can't do something differently as the leader, why do you think anybody here is going to do something differently? And those are the conversations that we need to have in order to move to like a happiness for a win, win, win all the way around. And it's more important now that I care about your win and not be focusing on my win, because when you win, I win.
I'm working with a ton of college students right now. I have a college ambassador program for a particular client, and we have figured out that we have to speak to our college ambassadors differently. And instead of the traditional ways that we engage them, we have to speak the way they like to speak. So instead of me communicating with them, I'm a little slower, so I tend to dictate into my phone. But I have a young man who is just out of college, who texts with them all day and has the communications coming back and forth. But he also sees their pains and can communicate that to me in a way that I might not otherwise receive it. And so I have to learn how to better communicate with them. And I'm hoping that they learn how to communicate better with me, because at the same time, we have clients we have to fulfill needs for. So the last thing you want to do, you talk about time, you have to have meeting times, but you don't expect to be late for a client's meeting. So the team understands that we all get on 15 minutes early, knowing that we'll actually be on 5 minutes early, but we can check and make sure that we don't have noise in the background, that our cameras are actually working. But it's also a check-in for us to get our heads where they need to be before we talk. And for them to understand that there's a process and a reason why time is money for a client.
Right.
It is for us too. And how we respect their time, where we can be more flexible. Your schedule is more fluid, but there are certain things that we can't give up. And there's a certain place where we have to draw the line. And for them, it was okay to, it clicked to them, understanding that there are certain things they have all the flexibility in the world with, as long as they communicate it.
Right.
And just getting over those hurdles.
Right. And I think that what we would say more meaningful connection for that generation is they're all on socials, right? That's how they communicate, that's their real life is through social. And when one of their friends, right, or one of their mutuals doesn't like or support their post, they feel horrible. And so when you understand that when you don't show up on time for the client, that's how they feel, right? That's how they feel. And when you're trying to bridge the gap between my generation and their generation, when I was in school and I didn't have somewhere to sit at lunch, like you look around and you're like, okay, there's nobody I know here. Like, I'm not really, what table am I going to go to? And that rejection of, I don't feel like I belong here, or you sit down on somebody and then they leave, right? And you're like, oh, right. Well, that was a lunchtime experience once. Now for the younger people, it's happening 1,000 times per day. 1,000 times per day, they're getting the message of, I'm not important, I don't belong, you didn't help, you didn't support. Because in their brain, when you look at it from a neuroscience standpoint, their digital relationships is the same to the brain as if you and I were sitting right here. And when you make those connections to something that is real for them, see, clients will never be real for them because they don't weigh the in-person as much as they do the digital experience. So you have to say, okay, have you ever had this digital experience? How did you feel? That's how this client feels. And they're like, oh, do you want to be part of that? Do you want to deliver that feeling? They don't, right? The younger people are probably the most giving, right? And the most feeling emotionally present generation than from us, way more emotionally present. But what happens is we're not connecting with it and directing it to a place that gives a positive response. So when you let a younger person not have any direction, right? It's like raising a child without any boundaries or guidelines, they feel lost. And so putting those things in place in something that has meaning to them, connecting it to their meaning. Now, it never means the same thing to me. I mean, it's just like as a parent, I look at my kids like they're aliens. I'm like, I can't believe that is the thing, right? But that is their experience. Yeah. How do you and I say as a behaviorist, you have to focus on the environment. This is the biggest, whether you're a parent, whether you're in a relationship, whether you're raising, if you did something that caused an emotion for me and I focus on you, you'll never change. Never will change. So that if you would, none of that's going to work. If I change the environment, the outcome is you change. And so when I'm talking to someone, I was like, okay, if this environment needs to be like walking at lunch, If you have a child who's smacking their sister, right? If you're like, don't smack your sister, right? Well, what you're doing is you're creating abandonment. I'm not good enough and I'm bad. But if you redirect the child to say, oh, can you help mommy carry this? Move the direction. You stop them from hitting their sister, but you redirected without them feeling bad. Well, if you're the employer, you have to redirect your employees to get to their outcome. They don't want to hit their sister, okay? But their habit is to do that, to be able to go, let's redirect so that you are more on time. Redirect so you understand the experience. And so it takes extra work. And that's why I keep saying, yeah, but if you wanted to be the manager, you want to be the leader, you want to be the CEO, if you look at the fine print, you realize that everything that doesn't work falls on your plate. We don't do any of the fun stuff. We do all the stuff that nobody else can do. And that's part of it, which means the self-development for you is forever. I'm constantly developing, constantly being the one that's growing and changing. I have to in order to serve my people. If I wait for them to get to me, nothing's going to happen. I'm like, how do I learn how to serve on the front line? How do I learn to serve in the management squeeze, which is horrible right now? How do I learn to serve in these different industries? I have to learn how to do it in order to be able to serve them. And that's the difficulty because the environment is moving quickly. It's changing. We've now got, AI and we've got machine learning and we've got all this stuff that's happening. Well, I'm like, you can either be angry about it or you can move with it. And if you're going to be in leadership in any capacity, you have to move with it. Stop being angry with your kids because they don't pick up the phone and call or they go, K. I'm like, didn't answer the question. I answered you a question. I got K. That does not, right? Have to be able to go back and forth so that you can communicate at their level. And that's what takes the work.
Okay. That was great examples to be able to go through and think through how we are communicating with people. And it's not about how we choose to communicate and what emotions we feel, but again, how they're feeling those emotions and how we can change that outcome by relating it to them and how they communicate, how they feel, and how they think.
Mm-hmm. And it's with the end in mind, right? The minute you start to feel the resistance, you got to go, hang on, wait a second now. Are you feeling like I care about you? I just want to make sure. Or do you feel lost right now? Like if you ask what they're feeling, then you can check in to say, is that what I actually intended? Right? So when I'm meeting with somebody or I'm doing a one-on-one or I'm talking to my kids or I'm in my relationship, right? I'm like, okay, I want you to feel really served right now. And then they go, but I'm not. And I'm like, okay, so let me regroup and let me try again. And I think that's the most powerful thing a leader can do is stop in mid-experience and say, you know what? I don't think you're getting what I really intended here. Can I try that again? Can I do this? Can I do a
rewind?
Do-over? Yeah,
rewind.
Do-over. Yeah. And because then people really like, oh, wow, she cares. She really cares.
Okay. My next question was going to be, what would your one takeaway, if anyone who is listening took away one item, would that be it? Or is there another point you'd really want to have them start at? Where is that starting point?
I think that if you can really just embrace that what you think is happening is never what's happening. It's never what's happening. And so you have to realize that you're in experience from your perspective. It's what you believe. And it's usually so far from what the other person is experiencing. And so if you can move yourself away from you and get over there and realize that any emotion only has a shelf life of 90 seconds. That's it. 90 seconds is how whether it's anger, fear, love, affection, admiration, it lasts for 90 seconds unless you feed it. And so if you find yourself in emotions for a long period of time, you have to ask yourself, are you in the pattern of feeding it? Which is like, I stub my toe and you're like, this always happens to me every morning when I'm late. I'm feeding it. It's about being able to center yourself and redirect it and go, oh, wow, I stubbed my toe. And guess what that does? It gives me a moment to pay attention to myself. And I might be able to turn it into a positive to redirect it so that you no longer feed that emotion. And when you can teach that within the organization to take out the emotion side of the organization and properly redirect it into the service part of it, now you've got a community.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much for sharing all this with us.
Oh, thank you so much.
For me, the reason I called the show Legends in Leadership is that each of my guests brings such a unique perspective on what leadership is, how we lead, how we are present, and how we help others grow and develop in our businesses, in our personal lives, all of those things. And the communication techniques and development pieces that you're talking about as leaders and even as individuals in our relationships, that literally changes how people feel about themselves, feel about organizations. That is true leadership. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's the end of our show for today. But again, thank you for joining us. And next time we will have another leader who is a legend in their field and will bring us a depth of knowledge. Thank you.